back to another lecture. One more lecture, one more story. So in this lecture, this is going to be a complete English lecture, and in this lecture we are going to be cover SA530, which talks about audit sampling. If you are a Hindi speaking student and more comfortable with Hindi, I have already uploaded chapter 4 revision, in which in the last 1 hour you will find SA530, one of the best revision lecture you are going to find on YouTube, and in this lecture also you are going to get the same quality. If this essay has haunted you till now, this is going to be one of the most easiest essay in your audit syllabus from now on after this lecture. This is one of my most favorite essay, and I have put a lot of pictures in this essay, and you will remember a lot of things in the lecture only. You will not have to go elsewhere. See, and I have all these statistical techniques, haphazard, random, and God knows whatever techniques, systematic, monetary unit, haphazard, all these techniques I have made super easy for you in this lecture. So if you like this lecture, please share it with your friends and family so that they can also reap the benefits out of it. And we are just going to start. So secondly, sir, if I have not studied this essay, or if I have not understood anything in this essay in my class lectures, can I still watch this video? Yes, you can still watch this video. You will get to understand each and every concept in extreme detail. Don't worry. Okay? I am not going to read each and every line. I will tell you the concept. I will help you read the keywords so that you know that our concept is covered, and then you can use your own study mat or your teacher notes to cover the syllabus from there only. I do not recommend changing the notes in the last time of exam. So you can, the language is of study mat only. So if your teacher has followed the study mat language, word by word it will match. So let us start. Let us start with a new story. What is my specialty? Stories. So let us start with a new story. Previously, what used to happen is, when I teach this story, I tell the story to students in chapter 1, nature, scope and objective of audit, that how the audit started and why the audit started, that Ambani ji, Dhirubhai Ambani came back to India, and he had a vision, he had a dream of starting the India's largest company. So he started collecting money, he bought the India's first IPO, collected money from people, and then the scale of the organization started increasing from one city to another city. Before that, what used to happen is, there were little organizations, little shops which had few transactions, and the number of transactions were so low that even 100% of checking auditor could do, and in an economical manner. Now, as we have international organizations, we have so much large organizations, we have globalization, so number of transactions have increased extremely. Auditor cannot do 100% checking because this is not practicable for him. Previously it used to happen, and we used to call it a traditional way of audit. Now we call it a modern way of audit when we use sampling. Okay, so sampling determines whole of your future. Everything depends on sampling. Sir, how is it? You are going to appear in exams after 1 month, and ICAI will pick up some question on sample basis and put it in your question paper, and ICAI will judge your future based on those sample questions, whether the student has studied or not, or whether the student should go for another 6 months, 4 months now, extremely lucky you are, whether the student should go for another 4 months. Suppose if you go to a doctor, you went to a doctor, Doctor Saab, my stomach is aching, I have bad stomach ache, I have bad headache, please do something. Instead of taking a sample of your blood, doctor pulls out all of your blood. Would that be okay with you? No, no. So everything around us operates on a sample basis. Sampling is extremely helpful in practical circumstances. Let us now study and start the essay, SA530. Extremely easy, extremely simple essay. You will love this essay and you will love me after this essay. So, sampling and audit procedure. First, usually these type of questions does not come, but ICAI has asked this question previously 2 times. So, I am going to read this for you. There is a growing realization that the traditional approach, 100% checking approach to audit is economically wasteful because all efforts are directed to check all transactions without exception. Why do we shift to sampling, sir? First, it is not practicable. Let's suppose you went to the kitchen, you turned off the gas stove, you came to the room and your mama asked, have you turned off the gas stove? He said, yes mama, yes I have done. Have you checked it properly? So now self-doubt starts creeping in. Have I really turned the gas stove off? Wasn't it open a little bit? Should I check it again? And you go to the kitchen again. An auditor takes 2 months to do the audit, and after that somebody, suppose ICAI president sir, takes the audit report in his hand and says, have you done the audit properly? Auditor will say, yes sir. Are you sure? I am looking at your audit report. Have you done the audit properly? Now self-doubt will start creeping in and he will think, should I check it again? Would it be possible for an auditor to check all the audit again? No. That's why he gives a reasonable assurance. Okay, I have checked a lot of transactions on a sample basis, and on the basis of transactions I can say that the accounts are good enough to go. This way the auditor is also satisfied with the work and शांति रहती है उसके मन में. शांति को क्या बोलेंगे यार इंग्लिश में? The auditor. Let's read. No conscious effort in human society is divested of economic considerations, and audit is no exception. What is economic consideration? Monetary consideration. So we direct all our efforts towards how can we save money, how can we do it economically, and audit is no exception. Traditional approach is economically wasteful because you have to hire a lot of articles. For Reliance, you have to hire a whole army of articles and you have to say attack on each and every transaction, and then 100% checking will be done. So that is economically wasteful. Reliance hasn't earned that much of profit, that much audit fees you will charge. Transactions without any exception. In traditional approach, all the efforts are directed to check all the transactions without any exception. Modern approach is shift in favor of formal internal controls. Ambani ji must have put a lot of internal controls because he also cannot monitor each and every transaction, each and every person. So he have set it up in place the internal controls, and on that we can rely that the data will be accurate only. Otherwise, he will only incur a lot of losses. Routine errors and frauds have greatly diminished. The auditors often find it extensive routine checking as nothing more than a ritual because it seldom reveals anything material. Now, the approach to auditing and the extent are undergoing a progressive change towards the questions of principles and controls. The extent of checking, how much checking does the auditor has to do, is a matter of judgment. There is nothing statutorily stated which specify what work is to be done, how it is to be done, to what extent it has to be done. We are in a revision video. We have covered whole of audit. Did I teach you anything that this auditor has to do? This is how the auditor sample. This is how much transactions auditor has to pick a sample. We have always left it to the auditor's professional judgment. So it is saying the same thing. There is nothing statutorily stated. Law has not stated anywhere what work is to be done, how it is to be done, to what extent it is to be done, and it is also not obligatory to adopt sampling technique. If the auditor feels that I will get good assurance only by checking 100% of transactions, he can go with the 100% transactions. To ensure good and reasonable standard of work, he should adopt standard and techniques that can lead him to an informed professional opinion. He should adopt standards and techniques which are widely followed and which have a recognized basis. इसलिए statistical theory of sampling is based on a scientific law. This enables auditor to make conclusion and express fair opinion. I think that is clear to you. we will study statistical and non-statistical sampling, and I'll clear all your confusion in statistical sampling. Do not worry. Meaning of audit sampling: it is application of audit procedure. We apply audit procedures to less than 100% of items, such that all sampling units have an equal chance of selection. This is to ensure that all items should represent the population, entire population. What is a basic easy example of sampling? Suppose your mother has cooked rice in a kadai. So she picks up a spoon, takes some sample of rice and tastes it, whether the rice has been properly cooked or not. That is a sample. What your mother just did, applied audit procedure, tasting to less than 100% of the population. She did not taste all of the rice. Also, when she tasted the rice, she expressed a conclusion on whole of the population. What did she say? The spoon rice was cooked or the kadhai rice are cooked? All of the rice are cooked, na? So what she did was application of audit procedure to less than 100% of the sample to express a conclusion on the population, such that each sampling unit has an equal chance of selection. What is a sampling unit? Each piece of rice is a sampling unit. Sampling unit is the units which makes up the population. And what is sample, sir? The units which we have selected consists called as sample. There were 1,000 pieces of rice. We selected 10 pieces of rice. So that 10 piece is a sample. Each rice piece is a sampling unit, and the 1,000 consists of called as the 1,000 pieces of rice are called as population. Okay. So what is population, sir? Population is the entire set of data from which sample is selected, about which the auditor wishes to draw conclusion. What is the characteristics of population? It should be appropriate. It should be relevant for the specific objective. Depends on the direction of the testing. Let me explain. See, it should be relevant for the specific objective. If you want to check whether rice has been cooked or not, so will you take the spoonful of rice or will you take spoonful of dal? You will take spoonful of rice only, na? Because you want to draw the conclusion about the rice population. Similarly, if you want to check about sales, whether the sales have been appropriately recorded, properly recorded, or the values are properly recorded or not, will you take purchase orders or will you take sales orders? Will you take sales invoices or will you take gate receipt notes? We will take sales invoices, right? That is, population should be appropriate, relevant for the specific objective. Similarly, it also depends on whether the population is appropriate or not, depends on the direction of testing. For example, if a company wants to increase the profit, what will it do with its debtor? Will it reduce its debtors or will it increase its debtors? The company will try to increase its debtors, so that company can show that we have made huge sales, and for creditors it will try to reduce its creditors. So when a company has increased its debtors and you want to check whether the company has recorded appropriately or not, what will you do? Company has sold 7 products, so 7 invoices should be there. Company has added 3 fake invoices. So if you want to check about the appropriateness of those invoices, what you can do is you can send external confirmation for all the 10 invoices. 3 responses will not come and 7 responses will come. So you will know that 3 invoices could be fake. What population did you choose? The sales invoices, right? Similarly, when it comes to creditors, what will the company do with the creditors? It will try to reduce the creditors. Now, if you take the same population of creditors, company has purchased goods on credit from 10 vendors and it is showing 7 vendors. You sent external confirmation to 7 vendors, all the 7 vendors replied. So, does your audit procedure worked? No, because your population was not appropriate. Sir, what will be the appropriate population in this case? You will see subsequent disbursement. If the company has made any subsequent disbursement in the next years to the previous debtors, because if the company has taken the money, it can not show in the accounts but it has to pay money back to the creditor. And if the company has made subsequent disbursement, so there must be some creditors that were not existing in that population. Secondly, what it can do, you can check the goods receipt notes. If somebody has sent goods, then it must have arrived at your gate and there must have been some entries of it. So if goods receipt note register is showing 10 notes and your creditors are showing 7 creditors, so you can inquire about that and you can know about that there are some missing creditors. So here what population did you check? Subsequent disbursement register, gate receipt note register. This is the appropriate population, and on which thing it depends? On the direction. If you are checking for overstatement, then you took the debtors population. If you are checking for understatement, then you took the subsequent disbursement, gate receipt note register, etc., etc. Understood how it depends on the direction of testing? Overstatement of accounts receivable, the population could be accounts receivable listing. On the other hand, understatements of accounts payable, you can check subsequent disbursement, unmatched receiving reports, gate receipt notes, etc., etc. Now the second characteristics of population should be, the population needs to be complete. For example, if your mummy has invited a lot of guests and cooked rice in 4 different utensils, now she has to check whether the rice has been cooked or not. She took rice from first kadai and tested it. Would she be able to tell you that all the 4 kadai rice are cooked, or would she be able to tell you that this kadai rice are cooked? Only one kadai rice, na? She'll have to take sample from each of the kadai to know that each and every one of them are cooked. Similarly, if there are 2 purchase registers and you have taken only one, you have taken samples from only one purchase register, you have not seen the second register, so your conclusions will not be appropriate. There is a possibility that there are misstatements in the second register. So population should be complete. The population needs to include all relevant items. Third one, the population needs to be reliable. The population needs to be reliable. What did you used to do when you are in school and when you want to confirm that whether you have eaten my candy or not? You used to ask the other person to take an oath to say, God promise I have not eaten your candy. So what will you do with the management? You cannot say to management, say God promise that our population is reliable. If your population is not reliable, you have to first check whether your population is reliable or not, whether your population is sufficiently complete and accurate or not. If the population is not reliable, sample drawn will not be relevant. If your population is not reliable, what conclusion will you draw from the sample? Because whatever conclusions we draw, we project it on the population, and your population is not reliable. Understood? Sampling unit. What is sampling unit? Individual item. One piece of rice is a sampling unit. In a class of 100 students, each student is a sampling unit. We call 10 students on the stage. That is a sample. Understood? The individual items that make up the population are known as sampling units. All the audit procedures are applied on these units, and the conclusion drawn from them are projected on the population. We called 10 students on stage. We asked some questions. 5 students replied and 5 students were blank. So we projected that 50% of the class understood the topic and 50% of the class did not understood the topic. What we just did was projected the conclusions to whole of the population. Do you understand now, sir? Then sample must be representative of the population. It must be closely similar to whole population, although not necessarily exactly the same. The sample must be large enough to provide statistical meaningful results. From a population of 5 lakh units, you took only 5 samples. Would that be a representative of the population? No, because the sample was not large enough. It was not a representative of the population because there could be a lot of variety in the population. So what we do to make sample a representative of the population is we divide it into stratas from 525 to 1000, from 1000 to 10,000, 10,000 to 1 lakh, we divide into smaller units and then take the sample, so that the sample becomes representative of the whole population. Do you understand? Now, approaches to sampling. There are two approaches, non-statistical and statistical approaches. Sir, this is very confusing. What is statistical, what is non-statistical? Let me tell you, sir. I'll remove your confusion once and for all. In non-statistical sampling, what we do is, an auditor is an experienced auditor. He has taken part in a lot of audits, so he knows that I am doing the audit of this company from the past 3 years. I have done audit of similar type of companies in different industries. So I know where the problem lies, where there can be misstatements, and which are the areas that we can ignore, which could be immaterial, which will be immaterial. So an auditor, through his expertise, through his knowledge, picks up some samples. For example, cut-off procedures he checks. So he picks up a lot of samples from the end of the period, towards the end of the period, and some samples from the starting of the period, and a sum of the samples in the different months. But a large number of sample is taken from the last of the period, because that period is more prone to material misstatements. Management wants to meet its targets, so it issues fake invoices. It wants to increase the sales, so it records the invoice, records the sales, even the goods are not dispatched or delivered from the company's warehouse. That's why an auditor checks a large number of transactions towards the end of the period. This is non-statistical sampling. Based on his judgment, based on his experience, he draws a sample which he considers to be a representative of the population. What is statistical sampling? As the technology has evolved, we have read in our class 11th and 12th in statistics, mean median mode. So as the technology has evolved, the number of transactions has increased drastically. Today in HDFC Bank, the number of transactions are so much more that an auditor cannot take a large enough sample. In mathematics, there is a rule which says that if you take a sample large enough whose mean is equal to the mean of the population, if the mean of the sample is equal to mean of the population, it will be a representative of the population. This is a mathematical truth. Okay. Secondly, if an auditor is taking a sample, for example, let's come back to non-statistical sampling. If the number of transactions were 5,000, auditor were taking 50 sample. Okay sir, 50 sample we take, and this is good enough for us. The transactions increased to 50,000. The auditor took 500 samples or 5,000 samples. The sample size was increased in proportion to the population. But as HDFC Bank, there are a lot of transactions, numerous amount of transactions, so large amount of transactions that we cannot increase sample size to that much. Hence, we take a sample from the computer, which is not as large enough. And also we do not need to take a large enough sample, because in HDFC Bank, the transactions happening are of similar nature, homogeneous transactions, same transactions, same control. So even if we check a small amount of transactions, we will be good to go. Do you understand? The transactions are so homogeneous, so similar, that even if we take a small number of transactions, the sample will be representative of the whole population. Do you understand this much? This is decided by the software, how much large sample we do have to take. And how the software decides? It decides a large enough number whose mean is equal to the mean of population. Do you understand this? You do not have to write this. This is not in your book. This is just for understanding purpose. That's why in statistical sampling, this is more scientific. That's why in statistical sampling, the sample size does not increase in proportion to the population. Very well. Now let us look at statistical and non-statistical sampling in detail. And I'll make you remember this, don't worry. What is statistical sampling? It is more scientific. Acha, one more thing. When the software has decided, sir, you need to take 500 sample for a population of 50,000 transactions, that would be good enough. So now the 500 transactions will be selected on a random basis, so that an element of randomization is in there. Also, this is a mathematical truth that if you take some transactions on a random basis, that will be representative of a whole population. Scientists have experimented with billions of dollars, have researched in and out, and then they formed a conclusion that if you take a sample on a random basis, that will be a representative of the population. So let us come to the statistical sampling. Audit testing done through this approach is more scientific than testing based on auditor's judgment, because it involves use of mathematical laws of probability and in determining the appropriate sample size. I told you what mathematical laws does it use. This was one example. There are a lot of other mathematical laws also, like law of probability summation, law of probability multiplication. These are not of your use. I discuss this in regular class, but in revision lectures you do not need to understand this. You just understand this, that this involves a mathematical law of probability in determining appropriate sample size. It has a reasonably wide application in large, where the population to be tested consists of a large number of similar items. Just like I told you, large number of similar items, banking transactions, or we are purchasing goods from one vendor only. For example, if we are an electricity manufacturing company, we purchase coal from Coal Authority of India Limited only. So we have similar number of transactions. We purchase coal and make payment. We purchase coal and make payment. We purchase coal and make payment. So the number of transactions has increased, but all the transactions are of similar nature. So we do not need to increase our sample size to that much to be sure. We can be sure of the population. Sample can be representative of the population in a small sample also. Do you understand? There is no personal bias of the auditor, because the size of sample is selected by software, and then the samples are selected on a random basis. Since it is scientific, the results are more reliable. Let's suppose once it happened with one of my seniors. He took a sample on the basis of his own judgment and found no mistakes in it. So he went to my manager, sir, I have checked all the transactions very thoroughly, very carefully, and I found no mistakes. The manager said, how did you take the sample? You have taken the sample on your own judgment. That is not a scientific basis. Your judgment is very wrong. So to save the auditor from this kind of embarrassment, we devised statistical sampling. This is more reliable, because now if he says that, sir, the software has taken the sample and I have checked the transactions, so the manager will not have anything to say. He will have to rely on the sample. He will have to rely on the results, because the sample was derived on a more reliable manner. In larger organizations, statistical sampling is always recommended. Do you know these two people? Rohan and I don't know the girl's name, Preeti. So, do you know about Jadoo? When the Hollywood was giving us Star Wars or different kind of super aliens, Bollywood presented us with his own super alien, Jadoo. And how did he came onto earth? So that was the most scientific thing that Bollywood could thought of. This is not scientific computer. I don't know. I have removed it so many times. This is more scientific. So what was the most scientific thing in Bollywood? This bloody computer. This computer. See, mathematical laws चल रहे हैं इसमें. This was free from bias, because let's think it yourself. If he has to make any bias, if he has to make any personal choice from so much large number of planets, would he choose only Jadoo, which cannot do anything? He only he can remove the Rohit's spectacles. lazy cooperation basically. So he was purely random basis, not of personal, not without any personal bias. If you remember this picture, we can learn 4 points. It is more scientific. It works on mathematical laws of probability, these 4 mathematical laws of probability, and from large number of planets without any personal bias, he chose Jatu. Large number of homogeneous items, and we select without any personal bias. Do you understand that? More scientific, mathematical laws of probability, large number of planets without any personal bias, chose Jadu. Large number of planets ki jagah transactions, in place of planets we'll put transactions, and without any personal bias. Don't write Jadu in exams, okay? What is non-statistical sampling? You will just have to read it. It is based on personal experience and knowledge of the auditor. Auditor should avoid establishing a pattern and should maintain an element of the surprise. There is one example given. For example, March, June and September may be selected in 1 year, and different months would be selected in next year. So it maintains an element of surprise. On the basis of value of item, top 10 highest value items he selected. This is on the basis of his personal judgment that the risk is higher there, so that risk is higher there, so we should check all those transactions. It is a common practice to check large number of items towards close of the year, so that cut-off procedures adequacy can also be determined, and also because year-end transactions are prone to risk of misappropriation. I told you already, the non-statistical sampling is criticized on the grounds that it is neither objective and nor scientific. Remember, when my senior goes to my manager, he criticized him on the basis that it is neither objective nor scientific. Degree of objectivity cannot be assured because risk of personal bias is always there, that I should select this more transactions from this area and less transactions from this area. So degree of objectivity cannot be assured. The closeness of qualities projected by the sample results with that of whole population cannot be measured. Here we did not choose the sample on a random basis, and hence we cannot be sure that the sample is representative of the whole population. However, these first 3 points were the limitations. It is neither objective nor scientific, degree of objectivity cannot be assured, and closeness of qualities cannot be measured. Next is the conclusion. However, auditor with his experience can evaluate accurately enough the sample findings to make audit decision, and the mathematical proof of accuracy maybe some case is a luxury only. Next, this method is simple to operate, but sometimes sample may not be true representative of the population because of personal bias and no scientific method. Do you remember Fukre? If you guys have seen Fukre, so you can remember this also. So when Chucha had a dream, it drives Honey to derive an amount of lottery from his dream. So Chucha saw in his dream that an elephant picked up honey in his trunk, and then Chucha came and Honey was crying for help. Then Chucha came, he put a slap, he put a hand on his face, and then elephant dropped Honey. So then Honey devised that elephant trunk, that is Ganeshji, Ganpati, and when Chucha slapped the elephant, it is 5. So 5 of Ganpati is his lottery number. This is how Honey derived. This is based on purely his personal experience. There is no scientific or objective method to this. This is very, very simple to operate, and there is a risk of personal bias. The whole story is personal bias. See, neither objective nor scientific, risk of personal bias. With his experience, he can evaluate accurately. Whenever Honey used to derive the number, he used to win the lottery. So, auditor with his experience can evaluate accurately, and it is very simple to operate, but sample may not be representative of the whole population. Do you understand the 5 points? Neither objective nor scientific, risk of personal bias. With his experience, he can evaluate accurately. This is very simple to operate, and sample may not be representative of the whole population. With these 5 points, you write 4 marks is guaranteed. Let us move on to the next topic, sampling versus traditional method of auditing. Shall I give you a break of 2 minutes? Yeah, half an hour has been, we have been teaching for half an hour. Let us take a break for 2 minutes. You can read it, take 2 minutes, read it, remember these, and then we'll move to the next topic. Read this. Make markings in your book, buddy. That will help you. How are you guys liking my style of teaching? If there is any feedback, any suggestion, any improvement that I could do, please tell me in the comment section. Please, you guys have my WhatsApp number 9817 664456. 9817 664456. Okay, so easy. You can come on to my WhatsApp number. You can join my WhatsApp group. Please, I'll be waiting for your feedback, and I'll work on that. Let us continue, guys. Yep. Let us continue. Sampling versus traditional method of auditing. In most of the circumstances, evidence available is not conclusive. Remember the story I told you that the President Saab is looking at the report of auditor and asking him, are you sure that you have conducted your audit properly? So he will have self-doubt. Evidence available is not conclusive in most of the circumstances. The auditor always takes a calculated risk. Even by undertaking 100% of the checking of the transactions, the auditor does not derive absolute satisfaction. Hence, sensible auditors, pragmatic auditors, adopt the statistical theory of sampling to derive necessary satisfaction. It is a mathematical truth that if picked purely on a random basis, sample will reveal the features and characteristics of the population, which means that the sample will be a representative of the population. Sampling is used as a part of test of controls. If the internal controls are satisfactory, if the internal controls are strong, what sample size will you pick up? Large sample size or small sample size? If the internal controls are strong, you will pick up a smaller sample size. If the controls are not properly implemented, you will pick up a larger sample size for getting satisfactory result. Sample is a process of estimation and it may have some error. What error is tolerable for a particular matter is a matter of professional judgment. C. Sample size is not a valid criteria to distinguish between statistical and non-statistical approach. For example, a chartered accountant was adopting non-statistical sampling, picking up sample on a random basis, on based of his experience, on based of his personal judgment. So he said that the number of transactions increased from 50,000 to 5 lakh. So I am increasing my sample only from 500 to 1000. So as I have not increased my sample size proportionately to the population, so I am following a non-statistical approach. So I am following a statistical approach. Is it a valid criteria? No. This is just a feature. This is not a criteria to distinguish between the two. Do you understand that? What factors does we decide? What factors should be considered to decide upon the extent of checking? First is size of the organization. If the organization size is huge, your sample size will be larger. If the internal controls are strong, how much is the sample size? Smaller. If the reliability is high, sample size will be smaller. Tolerable error range is high, sample size will be smaller, and the degree of desired confidence you need is high, sample size will be higher. Any confusion, do let me know in the comments. Advantages of statistical sampling: sample size does not increase in proportion to the population. It is more objective and more defensible. Remember the story of consultant and the senior. Minimum samples: the method provides the means of estimating the minimum sample size associated with a specific risk and precision. It provides a means for deriving calculated risk. It may provide better description of a large mass of data than a complete examination of all the data. It is widely accepted. The auditor should not attempt, this can be asked as a separate question, guys. The auditor should not attempt to use statistical sampling in two cases. For example, when exact accuracy is required, for example in case of legal requirement, and when exact accuracy is required, or in case of legal requirement, or when the audit staff has no knowledge about the sampling techniques. In these cases, you should not adopt a statistical sampling. Understood? Now this is the sampling process. First we choose sample design, sample size, sample selection, audit procedure. All these we are going to study in detail. First is sample design, size, selection and items. The auditor shall consider, while designing an audit sample, the auditor shall consider purpose of audit procedure, characteristics of the population, and shall determine a sample size sufficient to reduce sampling risk to an acceptable low level. What is sampling risk? Sampling risk is that the sample is not a representative of the whole population, that the sample will not, that while the auditor will express an opinion on the sample, that the population is free from material misstatement while it is not. This is a sampling risk. Sample design, the auditor will go a little bit fast over here. This is not a much important topic. While designing an audit sample, the purpose, auditor's consideration includes specific purpose to be achieved. What purpose does he want to achieve? Understatement, overstatement, what does he want to check? And the combination of audit procedures, nature of audit evidence sought, and possible deviation. What consists of a deviation? For example, there is an example in your ICAI study mat that you send an external confirmation to one person, the reply did not came. So could this be a deviation? Yes, this could be a deviation. But after 4 days, the check came. You sent an external confirmation that, sir, you have to pay us 5 lakh rupees. After some days, a reply did not came, but the check came of 5 lakh rupees. Is this a deviation now? This is not a deviation. So the auditor should know what consists of a deviation or misstatement and what does not. Completeness. In fulfilling the requirement of SA530, the auditor performs audit procedure to obtain evidence that the population is complete. He should obtain evidence that the population is complete, that there are only 2 purchase registers which the management has provided. There are not more than that. You have to obtain an evidence that the population is complete. He should have a clear understanding of what constitutes a deviation or a misstatement. The auditor should make an assessment of expected rate of deviation while testing controls. How much rate of deviation is expected to have. This assessment is in order to design audit sample to determine audit to determine the assessment is made in order to design the assessment is made in order to design an audit sample and to determine sample size. If the expected rate of deviation is high, the sample size will be high, and if the expected rate of deviation is low, the sample size small enough will suffice. Do you understand that? If the expected rate of deviation is high, the auditor will not perform test of controls. He will directly go to test of details and will check in detail from vouchers and verify that everything is correct or not. If the expected misstatement is high, 100% examination or use of a larger sample is appropriate. Understood? Now let us move on to some interesting topic. Examples of factor influencing sample size for test of controls and test of details. There is one question that every boy wants to know, in India especially. Sir, does size matters? Sir, what are you saying? Hey, I am talking about sample size. Does size matters? Yes sir, sample size matters. What are the factors on which you can, what are the factors that influence the sample size? Should you take a smaller sample size or should you take a larger sample size? What are the factors influencing size? Does size matters? Yes. On what? What things? On the desired level of assurance. On the expectations. Does size matters? On the expectations, expected level of deviation. If the expected level of deviation is high, if the expected level of misstatements are high, the larger sample size you should take. Answer on what things does the size matters? Desire, expectations, tolerance. If the tolerable level of misstatements is high, the sample size can be a little lower. Do you understand? So does size matters? Yes. On what? Expectations, deviation, expectations, desire, tolerance, and on risk assessment. If the risk assessed by the auditor is high, you should take a larger sample size. Will you remember this now? Sir, we'll remember this now. We'll score full 5 marks if this come in exams. See, increase in the extent of auditor's risk assessment. If the risk assessed by the auditor is high, he should take a larger sample size. Tolerable rate of deviation is high. Increase in tolerable rate of deviation, sample size will decrease. Expected rate of deviation is high, sample size will increase. Desired level of assurance is high, increase in the sample size. Sir, I hope you do understand these simple logics, because I don't think this much detail will go into the revision videos. We are already touching 50 minutes and this lecture will go for another 30 minutes I think. So will not be going into this detail that why does the sample size increase or decrease. I am assuming that you guys have done your classes already. Therefore, there will be a negligible effect on the sample size due to increase in the number of sampling units in the population. In statistical sampling, what we do not increase the sample size in proportion to the population. So here is the last line. There is a negligible effect on sample size due to increase in the number of sampling units in the population. Again, sir, does size matter for test of details? It is asking. Yes, sir, depends on desired, expectation, tolerance, and one more thing, other procedures. Other procedures are also necessary. What kind of other procedures, sir? Listen, first, whatever ROMM, risk assessment, desired level, expectation, tolerable misstatement. Let us first read these. These are same things. The higher the assessment of risk, larger the sample size. Increase in use of other substantive procedure. substantive analytical procedures. There is a very famous example in ICAI study material. If there is a building, there are 10 floors in the building and there is 80% occupancy rate and one floor is charged 10,000. So 80,000 amount should be there in books, should be credited in books every month. That is analytical procedures. So if the auditor has performed other substantive analytical procedures and has got sufficient level of assurance from there only, the auditor calculated that 80,000 should be there in the books and 80,000 rupees is there in the books. So he is satisfied. He does not need to take a sample size from that. Okay. Increase in use of other substantive procedures, size of sample will decrease. Increase in desired level of assurance, there will be an increase in sample size. Increase in tolerable misstatement, decrease in sample size. Greater the misstatement, he expects larger the sample size. Again the same line, negligible effect on sample size due to a number of sampling units. Stratification is appropriate, sample size will decrease. What is stratification, sir? Let us come to the stratification. These two pages you do understand? Will you bring full 4 marks? You have to write 4 to 5 points and you will get full marks, don't worry. See, when we divide population, we have a population, we sell so many products, we have a population, we have a product which is starting from 525 rupees and we have a product which is up to 10 lakh rupees. So an auditor, to make the sample representative of the population, divide the population into small sub-population which we call strata. 525 to 1000, 1000 to 1 lakh, 1 lakh to 5 lakh, 5 lakh to 10 lakh, 10 lakh, 1 lakh to 10 lakh to, what is this, a crore? No, yeah, a crore. So these are the number of invoices and auditor has taken this much amount of sample. He has taken all 100% of the population, checking in the largest amount of category high value items, and has taken 0 samples from the immaterial items and has taken the samples according to his professional judgment. So now the sample will be representative of the population. It will include 1 lakh to 5 lakh population, it will include 5 lakh to 10 lakh population, because we have consciously divided it into subpopulations and now we know that all the samples are there. Correct? We can also divide population on the basis of their characteristics. Here we divided on the monetary basis. We can divide on the basis of characteristics. For example, debtors which are more than 3 years old, debtors which are 1 to 3 years old, debtors which are 0 to 1 years old, etc., etc. Number of invoices, number of samples auditor can draw. Stratification. Audit efficiency may be improved by dividing it into discrete subpopulations. Objective क्या है? To reduce the variability of items within each stratum. What is variability, sir? Variance. The variety of population in each variety of items within each population. Objective is to reduce the variety. Now we only have 525 to 1000 rupees invoices in this population. So the variety is reduced. Instead of having 525 to 10 crore population, we have reduced the variety to small populations and then we are selecting the samples. Often the population is stratified by monetary value, but it can also be stratified through a particular characteristics that indicate a higher risk. For example, debtors which are more than 3 years old or debtors which are 1 to 3 years old. Okay. The results of sample are then projected to the respective stratum. If in this sample 1 lakh to 5 lakh sample, we found that 10% of the items are misstated, we will say that in 1 lakh to 5 lakh population, 10% of the items are misstated. Result of a sample is projected on the population. Projected on the respective stratum. Similarly, we will project all the results to different stratums and then will apply summation on that or addition to that, and then we'll see that how much is the whole population misstated, how much percentage. To draw an opinion on the overall population, auditor needs to combine the results of all stratum to check for possible deviation and risk of material misstatement. This is value weighted selection. Now next is value weighted selection. If a company sells different products, these are the earphones, speaker, mobile phones, the amount of LCDs is the most and the amount of mobile phones and printers, then second number is amount of mobile phones. In the P&L of a company, sales of a company, the company has sold 43%. Company has earned 43% of the revenue through the sales of LCD and 36% of the revenue through the sales of mobile phones. So by definition, these are more material than others. Hence, the auditor has taken more number of samples from these items. Do you understand that? Value weighted selection, we assign weights and then we choose number of samples according to that. Value weighted selection, while performing test of details, it may be efficient to identify the sampling unit as monetary units that make up the population. Having selected the specific monetary units within the population, the auditors, for example, the accounts receivable balance, the auditor then examine the particular item. This is saying that you have selected 36 samples. Now you will check each and every invoice and check that. Examine the particular items. For individual balances that contains monetary unit, those invoices will contain monetary amounts. One benefit of this approach is to define the sampling unit. Effort is directed toward large value item and can result in smaller sample sizes. The approach may be used in conjunction with systematic method of sample and is most efficient when using items using the random selection. The approach may be used in conjunction with systematic method of sample selection and is most efficient when selecting items using random selection. Once you have decided that you are going to select 36 invoices from the mobile phones and 43 invoices from the LCDs, now which 36 invoices and which 43 invoices that you should select on a random basis. That is what it is calling systematic method of sample and using random selection. This will result in a conclusion in monetary amounts. Suppose you find three invoices which are misstated. 3 invoices there has been a misstatement. So you will get to know that this much amount is misstated in your P&L, in your sales book. Okay. The auditor shall determine a sample size sufficient to reduce the sampling risk to an acceptably low level. Here we have decided that we are going to take 100 samples. The auditor needs to determine what sample size is sufficient to reduce its sampling risk to an appropriately low level. Level of sampling risk the auditor is willing to accept affects the sample size. If he is willing to accept a higher risk, the sample size will decrease because he is willing to accept higher risk. The lower the risk the auditor is willing to accept, greater the sample size needs to be. Sample size can be determined by statistically based formula or on the basis of professional judgment. Auditor can use either of them, either determine the sample size by a formula or by his professional judgment. Then the next 2 pages are factors affecting sample size. So shall we continue on to the next topic? Next topic is selection of items for testing. Here we have sample selection method, and oh my god, a lot of students find these so confusing, so difficult. Finally, this confusion is going to go away. That is my promise to you. Pakka promise. Okay. And if this confusion goes away, you need to comment down what was your favorite part of the video, or at least comment down, sir, this was the coolest video on this essay I have ever seen. So let us move on to something. First, let me show you a table. Let me show you random sampling, simple random sampling. After then we'll go to the table. That table is super special. What is random sampling? Have you heard about random number tables? Now look at the level of ICAI exam. So difficult, so easy. They are so difficult, so difficult. They are telling you about the random number tables, how to select a sample from random number tables. Now you must have heard about random number tables a lot, but you might not have understood how the random number table works. I will explain it to you how does random table number works, but you are only going to laugh after it. See, this is a table of random numbers. Suppose you have 900 population, 900 sampling units, and you need to select 10 samples. So how many digits are in your population? 900, 3 digits. So you have to select any 3 digits. So you have to select any 3 digits from this random number table randomly. So let's suppose I selected 711. So this became my starting point. 3 digits. First sample is 711. Okay. Next sample is the next 3 digits, which is 469. Next sample is the next 3 digits, which is 766. Next sample is the next 3 digits, 886. Then 523. Then 856. Then 761. Then 000. 000 to we can exclude that. Then 508. Then 216. So these will become our samples. This is how we are going to select our 10 samples. This is how we use the random number tables. Look at the level. Similarly, you could have selected any number, 279, 930, 495, 266, any number. This is how we use the random number table. These tables previously used to these tables were previously printed in the markets. Previously people could have buy these from markets, but nowadays there are many these are generated using various applications on cell phones. This is what a simple random sampling is. Every item has an equal chance of selection. Bias does not affect the selection. Where is the bias here? Use of random number tables. Today, after the technology, these tables are generated using various applications. This is considered appropriate when there are reasonably similar units within a reasonable range and homogeneous population. For example, within the range of 55,000 to 225,000 and not within the range of 525 to 10,50,000. Understood? And picking up in a random sampling can also be done by picking up numbers in a random way, maybe from a drum. In a drum, you put some papers with numbers on it and pick that, just like a lottery ticket. That is a random sampling from a drum. Now let's move on to our table. This is our table. So we have 4 methods here: haphazard, block 1, block 2, systematic sampling. So let me tell you about haphazard sampling. Let's suppose our Rahul goes to an office and he wants to get the cell phone number of Neha. He is an auditor and now he says, Neha ma'am, what's your number of car? What's the number of your car's number plate? Neha says 2456. Hey, article, take 2456 as sample. That is the number plate of Neha ma'am's car. Okay ma'am, what is your house number? I'm just taking sampling. Neha says 286. Hey, article, take 286 as a sample. Okay ma'am, what's your cell phone number's first 3 digits? Neha says 8. 8 and only 8. Only 8. 8 is my shoe number. Do you want to get slapped or what? Neha says. So Rahul was a little disappointed, but he says, hey article, take 8 as a sample. He desperately wanted to impress Neha, but what is he doing? He is doing anything. There is no logic, there is no sense between this. So this is what we call as haphazard sampling, where there is no logic, there is no sense. We are taking sample on a haphazard basis. Anything and everything will work, right? Haphazard sampling. So Neha wasn't impressed by this trick. So now there is 7 o'clock ticking in the clock and Neha wants to go home. Neha was just packing his laptop, her phone rings and this is her boss on the call. Hi Neha, can you please send the sample file today only? We need to send it to client which samples we have selected. Thank you very much. I am expecting the sample file by 9. I hope that's fine with you. Neha says, okay boss, that's fine, and and cut the phone. So now Rahul sees up another opportunity to impress Neha. Hi Neha ma'am, do you want to select sample? Do you want to go outside the office? I can select the sample for you. I'll do that for you, do not worry. This will just take a coffee. If you can take me on a coffee date, I'll select the sample for you. So Neha thinks and says, okay, you do the sample thing and tomorrow we'll go together. Neha walks outside of the office and now Rahul is left with the laptop. What Rahul does is, Rahul selects 150 sample in a single row from 10 to 160. 150 samples in a single row and sends the file to her boss. Next day, the boss calls Neha in her office. Neha, what have you done? What kind of sampling was this? Neha says, what happened, ma'am? You selected 150 samples in a row. Is this what we are paying you for? So Neha hears the lectures for half an hour and comes angry in her cabin. Now Rahul goes to Neha's cabin to ask her, was the meeting good? Was your boss impressed? Now Neha will tell her how impressed she is from her. See, in log sampling, what we do is we take a number haphazardly and then select all the samples in a line. But this has a very, very high risk because, for example, you are working in a Lay's company and Lay's maintains its records in such a way that all the record of red Lays are in one line, next yellow Lays, next blue Lays, next green Lays. This is how Lay's structure its accounts. So if you select 150 sample in a row, this is a possibility, a high possibility that you select all the samples for one Lay's packet only. Do you understand? Most of the companies structure in a way. For example, if a company sells cell phone and earphones and laptops, etc., etc., so there is a high risk that you will select all the samples for one product only, and we want to avoid that. So to avoid that, there is a block 2 sampling method which says that you can select multiple starting points and divide the blocks into little parts. For example, we had to select 10 sample here, so we selected 10 samples in a line. Instead of doing that, we can select 7, 8, 9 and 42, 43, 44 and in the block of 3, 3 basically. Understood? This is how we can reduce the risk of selecting only one item or all the items from a specific thing. Block sampling is very rarely used in exceptional circumstances. Next, there is systematic interval sampling. What does this method say? For example, you have to take a sample of 100 items. What will you do? For example, you have a total number of population. You have 100 items in a population and you have to select a sample of 10. So what you will do, you divide the total population by the number of samples. It comes to 10. 100 divided by 10. It comes 10. So first item you will select haphazardly, randomly, any of the items from the first 10 units. Let's suppose you selected 6. Now after 6 you will add 10, 16, then 26, then 36, then 46. See, 6, 16, 26, 36, 46, 56. This is how you do a systematic or interval sampling. Where is the risk here? If the client knows that you have selected, if the client knows your starting position, he can structure the items in such a way that you do not find any material misstatements. Understand? So these are the 4 methods of sampling: block sampling, haphazard sampling, interval systematic sampling, and you already know about stratified sampling. There is one more method, value weighted sampling. I showed you the table a little while ago where we selected the samples of the company mobile phones, LCD earphones, and with the company was selling, and we allocated weights to that, and that was value weighted sampling, monetary unit sampling. In stratification, what do? I hope you understand the concepts now. So what stratified sampling is? We divide the population in a few separate groups which are called strata. Each stratum is treated as a separate population, 2,25,000 and below, 225 to 5,50,000, 550 to 775,000. The number of groups into which whole population has to be divided is determined on the basis of auditor's judgment. Random sample are chosen from each strata. Reason kya hai? Reason is highly diversified population, weights should be allocated. It is simply an extension of simple random sampling. What is interval sampling, sir? The number of sampling units in population is divided by the sample size, 5,000 by 150. So, having determined the starting point, each 50th sampling unit thereafter is selected. Although the starting point is determined haphazardly, the auditor would need to determine that the sampling units within the population are not structured in a way that the interval corresponds to a particular pattern. For example, in a company, there are two accountants, accountant A and accountant B. Each month, one accountant comes. January A, February B, March A, January, February, March, April B, May A, June B. So, if the auditor also selects a sample of alternative months, he will be able to check the work of only one accountant. So, auditor has to keep this in mind while doing systematic sampling. Monetary unit sampling is a value weighted sampling, and my pencil's charging is over. What should we do now? I have not got any charger also. And how much is the chapter left? Only 2 pages chapter left. Can we continue like this only? Sorry for that. I forgot to charge my pencil. Do not worry, we will complete the lecture now only. I'll not be able to highlight only, but is there any option so that I can highlight with finger? I don't think so. Don't worry, I'll read this, and if you think I'll slow up my speed. Okay, haphazard sampling. Without following a structured technique, the auditor selects the sample without following the structured technique, and the auditor would try to avoid any conscious bias. Haphazard selection is not appropriate when using statistical sampling. Haphazard sampling has no structured approach, does not involve judgment, and does not even use random number tables. When we use random number tables, it is called as random sampling. In this, we do not use any random number tables and does not involve any judgment. What is block? It involves selection of blocks of contiguous items from within the population. Block selection cannot ordinarily be used in audit sampling because most populations are structured in a sequence and can be expected to have similar characteristics. Like I gave you the example of Lay's and that mobile phone company which sells earphones, LCD also. Although in some circumstances it would rarely be an appropriate sample selection technique. Also, if the client has the idea of block selection pattern of the auditor, misstatements and deviation can easily be overlooked. This is one of the disadvantages of block sampling. There is a close selection between this method and a non-statistical sampling. Consequently, it has similar characteristics, namely simplicity and economy. It is very simple, you understand this, and it is very economical. You can take the samples in 2 minutes only. On the other hand, there is a risk of bias and of establishing a pattern in selection which may be noted by the auditees. I hope you understand this. So the next 2 pages are table only, and we are heading towards the end of this lecture. Only last 2 pages. Performing audit procedures. Auditor shall perform audit procedures appropriate to the purpose on each item selected. If the procedure is not applicable to that item, he shall perform the procedures on a replacement item. For example, auditor has selected a few items, few checks that I'll check whether the payment of these checks has been received or not. He has selected 7 samples, from which one of the checks came is a cancelled check. So now auditor cannot check whether the payment has been made or whether the payment has been received, because that is a cancelled check. So what he will do, he will replace that sample with some another sample. This is called a procedure not applicable on the, if the procedure is not applicable on selected item, he shall perform the procedure on a replacement item. And if he is unable to perform the procedure or suitable alternative procedure, the auditor shall treat that item as a deviation or a misstatement. If he is unable to apply the audit procedure, for example, he has sent external confirmation to one client and the client is not replying back. Also, he is not able to perform any alternate audit procedure, then he can consider that as a deviation or a misstatement. So now there is a new word and very important word, which is anomaly. This is, for some reason, I don't know, my favorite word, and I have remembered this since I was in CA Inter. Anomaly. What is anomaly? 1 in a million. Something which do not represent the population. You find a misstatement, but the misstatement is one of its kind. Maybe this word is my favorite because I am one of its kind. So this is also one of its kind. The misstatement. What we used to do was, what we were doing till now was, we were selecting a sample and projecting the misstatements from that sample to the population. That if there are 10% misstatement in the sample, then there is 10% misstatement in the population. What an anomaly does is, what an anomaly says is, this is an exceptional deviation. This does not represent the deviation in the population. This is 1 in a million situation and this does not represent the population. For example, Amazon has very strong IT systems. Once in a while, Amazon IT systems got a bug or somebody hacked that. So some of the data got misstated. Auditors selected a sample from that and got some misstatements. So Amazon will say, sir, that was an anomaly situation. That was 1 in a million situation, that does not represent the population. Do you understand that? What is an anomaly? But when the auditor considers an item to be an anomaly, when he is saying that yes, this is an anomaly, he should have obtained high degree of satisfaction that yes, this does not represent the population, this does not represent the misstatements in the population. He has to be certain enough, he has to obtain a high degree of certainty. Do you understand that? See, in analyzing the deviations, the auditor may observe that many may have a common feature. The auditor may decide to identify all items and extend audit procedures to those items. In addition, such deviations or misstatement may be intentional and may indicate the possibility of fraud. Whenever there is a misstatement, the auditor shall investigate the nature and causes of any deviation and evaluate their possible effects. This was, up until now, was common sense. In the extremely rare circumstances, when auditor considers a misstatement deviation to be an anomaly, the auditor shall obtain high degree of certainty that such misstatement or deviation is not representative of the population. Do you understand that? Say yes. Yes, teacher. Okay. The auditor shall obtain high degree of certainty by performing additional audit procedures and obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence that this deviation does not affect the rest of the population. Anomaly may be defined as a misstatement or deviation that is demonstrably not the representative of the population or deviations in a population. Now, projecting misstatements. Auditor is required to project misstatement for the population to obtain a broad view of scale of misstatements, but this projection may not be sufficient to determine an amount to be recorded. When misstatement has been established as anomaly, the auditor still has to consider its effect. You cannot say that this is an anomaly, so we do not correct it. You have to correct it and if you do not correct it, auditor will see whether this effect is material or not, whether he needs to modify the opinion or not, because there is a misstatement. Misstatement is a misstatement. We will not project its percentage on the population, its results on the population, but that is still a misstatement. Okay, so auditor still has to consider its effect on the financial statement. For the test of details, auditor shall project misstatements found in the sample to the population, whereas for test of control, sample deviation rate is also the projected deviation rate. What does this say? That when you check in detail, when you check from vouchers and verify from the vouchers the amount recorded, suppose you have checked 100 samples and you found that 10 samples were not properly recorded. So you will say, sir, 10% is the sample deviation rate and 10% must be the population, 10% items in the population must be misstated. That is my conclusion. This is for test of details. But while doing test of controls, you say, sir, I expect 10% of the misstatements due to this problems in the control. 10% of the misstatements due to this problems in the control. So the sample rate of deviation, projected deviation rate. So the sample deviation rate is also the projected deviation rate. You did not say that you haven't selected a sample till now. You have selected the samples of controls only, and on the basis of that you are saying that this population must be this percentage misstated. Do you understand that? Evaluating the results of sample. After doing all of this, the auditor shall evaluate the results of the sample and he shall evaluate whether the use of sampling has provided him a reasonable basis for conclusion about the preparation that has been tested. Easy. So this was your whole of the essay, SA530. I hope you do understand this essay, and I am in the process of recording all other videos, so you can check out the videos on my channel, and I hope you are liking these. Yeah, please do give me your feedback. Please do give me your review about the classes. How are you liking? Do you like the classes? Or because it is taking immense amount of efforts, and I'm not leaving any room. I'm doing my best here, and if you guys have any feedback, please share it to me. I did not insist this much to my Hindi speaking students because I can see their faces, I can read their faces, and my Hindi speaking audience is a bit large. So I am receiving comments from on YouTube and reviews on WhatsApp feedback. So I know that those classes are really good and what are the points that I need to improve upon. But in case of you guys, I'm talking to a camera. There is nobody sitting in my class. Secondly, this is not my mother tongue. And I do know how to speak English. I do know how to have a conversation in English, but I have never ever in my life given a lecture in English. So I do not know how effective my teaching skills are while I am teaching in English. Is it like that only I am understanding what I am saying, or are you also understanding what I am saying? Please, I request you to drop a comment, and I know that you guys are really lovely and you will do that for me. Any queries, please connect me on 9817664456. I'll surely reply to you guys, and all the best for your exams. You will definitely score good marks. Believe in yourself. You guys are really capable. You have come a long way from first class to CA intermediate. You guys are capable of doing that. Shall I tell you a story? This video will become long. Let me tell you a story. I'll just take your 2 minutes. So there was a baby eagle, and there was this mama eagle. The baby eagle was, when the baby eagle was born, the mama eagle used to daily go out and take food for baby eagle and feed him. After some time, when the baby eagle grows up, one fine day, the mother eagle decided that I'll drop the baby, I'll teach the baby eagle to learn how to fly. So the mother eagle goes with the baby eagle on the cliff, a very, very high cliff, and asks him to jump off the cliff so that he can learn to fly. Now, the mother eagle knows that if the baby eagle does not fly, she has the capability to fly with the higher speed and catch him, so it will not hurt him. But the baby eagle does not know that. He is very, very scared, seeing down the cliff, what will happen, and he looks at her mother and asks, "Oh mama, what if I fall?" And the mother replies, "Oh darling, what if you fly?" The mother eagle knows that the baby eagle is capable of flying higher. The mother eagle knows that the baby eagle is born to fly. He has the capabilities to fly higher than any other bird in the sky. He's so strong, but he does not know his capabilities. But the mother eagle knows. The same is the case with you. You guys do not know, you guys do not understand that your mama has brought you up to this cliff. Your mama has brought you here because she knows that you are capable of doing this. She has gotten you admitted in the CA course because she knows that you are the capable one. There is a saying that God knows better and mother knows the best. She wouldn't have let you take admission in CA course if she knew that you are not capable enough. She would have done something else for you. She would have gotten your admission somewhere else, but not in this course. You are in this course, and believe me, baby, your mama knows that you are capable. Your family knows that you are capable. Do not doubt yourself. When I left my job, my mama knew that I have the capability. Otherwise, she would not have let me do this decision. Let me take this decision. All you need, all the baby eagle needs, is just a little faith in himself so that he can jump off the cliff. And once he jumps off the cliff, once he takes control of himself, there is no stopping him. He'll reach the highest heights in the sky, and so do you guys. I hope you like this lecture. I hope the story will help you have some belief in yourself. We'll end this lecture here only, and I'll meet you in the next video, in the next one. Till then, goodbye, take care, bye-bye. And do not forget to like and subscribe the video, share it with your friends, and comment down that this was the coolest lecture ever. Okay, bye.